All right, hello everyone. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Vayetze, and it starts off where last week's Torah portion leaves off that Jacob, is leaving his house of his father and mother, and he's going. First of all, he's running away from his brother Esau, who wants to kill him, but also he's going to find a wife. He's going to find a wife, and Rivka says, "Where to go? Go to my brother." And you'll find a wife. Okay, Heinrich said this week's Torah portion, it begins as Yaakov is leaving this place called Beersheba, which we'll see is a very good place, and he's going to Haran, which we're going to see is a very bad place. Thus, this is like Rashi says, an Eber did Selung from them, Sion from Frierdiker Parsha. This is a continuation from what we read about in the previous Torah portion where Yaakov left his home, and now it's just telling us that he left and where he's going. In Torah is all data. Torah, everything is very exact. Afilu, even from Ein Hebrew to Ors, even from one seemingly extra word, letter, learned man up, we can learn Gans Allah's whole laws. Haint Mikol Shekan, how much more so? We have a whole entire topic, which repeats several times. Is doch das geweis. It must be, it's obvious that this is a teaching for all generations. The Torah, who wrote the Torah? God. Who is God? God is he's creating us. He's creating us, me and you. So this is his instruction, pretty important book. For Yeder Zeit, when the Yeder or in every time and every place, un oich for Heintig, and also for our present age, or time. While the Torah, because the Torah is Ebeka, the Torah is eternal. Of them, Neman, on the name Beersheba. So in other words, this is not just a story about one individual person that we can take lessons in our life if we, if we're somewhat similar to that person when we get into similar situations, or just a nice story. It says, no, this is a lesson for each and every human being, each and every one of us, from our Creator who's creating us. So listen, what do we have to learn from this? Listen. Yaakov went out of Beersheba and he went to Haran. There's a tremendous message over here. With them, the name Beersheba, the Torah says, Tzvei Tamim, 2 reasons, to leave them Shavua, because of the Shavua of Beersheba, the oath, which is given by the Krisis Bris, namely a covenant, which was made between Avimelech, who was the king of Gerar, he was like the king of the whole area over there, but Gemach that he made with Abraham. Another reason is to leave them Zibden ten Barnum, the 7 wells, was made Gagrabt, which were dug in Nachan Shalom after the peace with Avshalom, with Abimelech. I'm sorry, with Abimelech. The Yitzchak dug wells. In any case, the word Beersheba is talking about Sheva from the language of a Shavua, an oath, or Beersheba from the language of number 7 wells. In any case, both of these are a Zustand, is implying a situation from Roikat, from peace for ye Jews. And where did he go? He left this place where there was peace and there was no problems whatsoever, and the non-Jews were friendly with the Jews, right? And they let us benefit everyone. And he went to a place called Haran. Their Indian for Haran, the place for Haran is exactly the opposite. The rabbis say, Haran of Shalom, that it was the flaming anger of the world. Their Tsaren from Welt, the worst place in the world. Mefrek Takashi, you can ask a question. And there was no honesty over there. There was no integrity. They were just cheaters and liars. Mefrek Takashi, you can ask a question. The Eberster hat uns gegeben Torah. God gave us Torah and commandments from sein full and bright hand, from his wide and open hand. Vumigit zich norakir. Wherever you look, we have commandments. Is showing Foran other a mitzvah zasa, a positive commandment, or in its branches, or maybe a negative commandment that we have to keep. If so, it's not so easy to be a Jew. From Aina, from the Shasamides, you can see there's one of the 613 negative command prohibitions, and as hot, yeah, whether the positive commandments or one of the negative commandments is hot erdoch gedarv. God should have made it, at least a rupkanemen, taking away all of our problems, dagos from us. Here we're doing what God wants, right? So it's like hiring somebody to work in your office and giving him a whole pile of work to do. And then the whole time that he's working, you play like, loud radio music in his ears, and you have people like pushing his chair and then stealing his whatever his table from him and moving all the things around and, like burning his shoes, putting matches in his shoes, all the time. You can't work in such conditions like that. Who would want to work? And that's exactly what God did. What did he do? He gave us Torah, he gave us commandments, he gave us a tremendous job that everywhere we go, we have to constantly be involved in the commandment of the Torah, the commandment of the rabbis. And then he made all sorts of difficulties and problems of the exile, problems of making money, etc., problems with health, problems with children. Kadeya soll sein lichtig der kiyum mitzvahs. In order to, leichter. Why couldn't God make it a little bit easier for us to do the commandments? I mean, the commandments are hard. Even the most optimum situation, commandments are difficult. Noch mehr, even more. Men soll bechlal nit haben sutan mit inyan yolam. Says the Rebbe, I even have a better idea. Why should Jews have anything to do with the world at all? Why can't we be like the Jews were when they get out of Egypt, right? They were in the desert and God protected them. Oh, that's the way things should be. If we're God's chosen people, so we should be special from everybody. We should be removed from matters of the world, and everybody should do work for us. Why we're doing God's commandments? No one else is doing God's commandments. One time we should just have peace and quiet so we can sit and learn Torah. Or the roof, therefore, that's what the Torah comes and tells us about Yaakov. Thus says this means Jacob, decided to do what his father and his grandfather did, have total self-sacrifice, have a life that was just filled with all sorts of incredible difficulties and disappointments. And if you want to call it challenges, if you want to, you can call it obstacles. He chose to take that path. And what did God do? He made it even more difficult. The Seder from Yisrael, Yaakov gave us a lesson in what a Jew really is, because Yaakov's name became Yisrael. Visa seinen schon abgeteilt, like the story is already, it's like Jacob, as he is already separated, he is different, not like Abraham and not like Yitzchak. Yisrael was the perfect one. From Abraham, he had a child called Yishmael. And Yitzchak had one of his children was called Esav. But Yaakov, he's the perfect one. All it says is mitaso, his offspring were all complete. Either Yaakov had gedarft chasanav, before he had a wedding, boyandem Beis Yisrael, building a house from the Jewish people. Hadem dim gehesen, a rois came from Beersheba. God said, go out of Beersheba. Avek gein oich, from the yeshivas, going out from Shem Ve'aver. That's what it says. After he left, he went to a place called Shem Ve'aver. But God said you have to go out over there. Leave there also. Not enough that you just leave your home. You have to go to Haran. Haran Avshalom, the worst place in the world. Either had gedarft oif stellen dem Am Yisrael, before he raised and established the Jewish people, because all of his children were going to be Bnei Yisrael. That's all the Jewish people. What they're gekant und gedarft sein in Beersheba. That's not right. He should have left him in Beersheba. And in Beersheba, there he could have prepared himself properly for learning the Torah and doing the commandments. And even better, his whole family, what are you raising children, such a terrible place like that? In Haran, that's where all of his children were born in Haran. He had to, we'll learn next week, he had to run away from Lavan also. Vu mitzvahs kumen on green, where mitzvahs are easy, when averas and sins are very difficult. He should have stayed in Beersheba, where it's very difficult to do sins, and it's very conducive to do good things. Yeah, in order oif to boyan and Beis Israel, but in order to build up the Jewish people, his family, Hoter Gadar, the Roiskin, he had to go out from Beersheba. And he went to Haran. An ord from hell and Vester, a place which is difficult and dark, was Elokus, which godliness is completely concealed. Oich Olam, the world alone, is Kishmo Lashon Helam. The world itself is bad enough. It's a place of concealment. How much more so Charon Afshalom, which is what's called the flaming anger, the worst place of the world. Right? Anyone who tries to be normal over there, but just meets with misery and disappointment. And that's where God sends the chosen of the Jewish people. Vasdor, which there are sins in Haran, says the sins are very, very easy. And Zion Green says sins are very easy to do, when mitzvahs and commandments are very difficult. Und durch them, by means of this, hat in by stand by gestanen the nisyonis. But no, Jacob had to leave this place of comfort and a place where there was no troubles, and go to Haran by means of standing firmly in the face of all these difficulties. He built a Jewish home, mitat shlemo. That's really where he reached his true completion. Yeah. Sorry, 1 minute. It's a little bit bigger, so it's easier to read. I think maybe I overdid it a little bit with this picture, but all right. Beshas Yaakov, in the time that Yaakov was Avekin Haran, it says that Yaakov went to this place Haran. The first thing he did was Vayivga b'makom. It says that he met the place. What is this place? It says the place was a holy temple, but it says, what does it mean Vayivga b'makom? Rashi explains that he prayed. The first thing he did when he got to this place called Haran is he prayed. The Chorah, at first glance, as gate kein Haran, if a person is going to Haran, is gefin sich zivu, in order to find his mate, his future bride, and making a family, as hot the erste Zach, the first thing he should have, a rois lernen zich the sprach. He should have first of all taken a course in the language, minhagim, the customs of the place. You don't want to get embarrassed from the Medina, from the country. You know, everybody's walking around with a sombrero on, and you're walking around with a cast. What is it? A French, a hat, different. Everybody's gonna laugh at you. Everyone's walking around with sandals on, and you walk around with high boots or something. You have to learn the basic things, how to act like everybody else, sort of in a way. How to dress, how to. It says no. If you how to act, how to talk, the customs. The first thing Yaakov did was none of those things. The first thing he did was he prayed. He should have learned how to anta he should have put on the garments of people. Yaakov had aber abgelegt the alle Sachen. Yaakov put everything aside. Un in was hat sich ausgewendet. What did he do? What did he work at? Prayer. Wie gesagt, like we said previously, is the stories that are about Jacob Azoivi only pouring from Torah, like all the stories of the Torah, this is a teaching for all generations, especially to the Jews. Then Einer Gate Boyan, base Israel. If you want to go and build a house in Israel, in other words, a Jewish home, and a person can think, Mele Bizitzter, up to now, is there Gesetzen und learn Torah? I've said and I learned Torah, right? You want to build a good Jewish home, it's based on Torah and the commandments. So now I'm going to get married. So you might think that, okay, up to now I've learned Torah and I've done the commandments, but I got to be normal. But now I'm going to get married. Is there Geta Royce? I'm going out into the world. Is Darfer does alts upkilling? I have to leave all this Torah and religion stuff and concerning myself with ois learning und noch zu ton I should learn and I should follow the customs of the country. Noch laufen the ein Wohner, go after the people who live in the country, see what everybody does, how they act, etc. Right? Everybody goes to the baseball game. I'll go to the baseball game. Everybody watches hockey on television. I'll watch hockey on television. Everybody votes Democrat. I'll vote Democrat. Whatever people do, I'll do. So if we say to him, no, was darfer sich an avek, Gavin, what should you devote yourself to? The first thing that you should really be concerned with is connecting yourself to God. Don't forget about the Creator. Adarab, exactly the opposite. Now, now you have to take to prayer noch mehr, even more than before. Maybe the people listening to this is a little bit difficult to understand, but religious Jews, so they go to, religious Jews, children start to pray. First of all, children can read usually when they're about 3 years old. They teach children to read when they're 3 years old. And by the time that they're 5, they can already read the Chumash in Hebrew and everything. Some of the explanations. And children also begin to pray also in that, they pray the prayers from the synagogue, from what's called the prayer book, the Siddur. A lot of those prayers are psalms of King David. They sing psalms of King David. They're praising the creator of the universe. And also we're asking God to improve the world to this. And we're learning the ideas of Torah. And this goes on from when the child is 3 years old until he gets married. He sits in school and he just learns Torah, how to understand the Torah, the stories of the Torah, the commandments of the Torah, how to learn the Talmud better, how to learn Chassidut better, how to learn. Okay, so that's learning. After a person goes into the world, and so a person has to get a job. You have to get a job. You have to have a family to support. You can't depend on God to give it to you. You have to depend on yourself to a certain degree, right? Okay, now the question is, to what degree? And what is first? Is it my work is first, and then I want God to help me? Or maybe it's not that way. Maybe God is the whole business, and I'm helping God. God will provide my food, my money for me. He'll provide everything for me. But he doesn't want me to just sit back and wait. He wants me to be his partner. That's how God set up the world. So God wants me to do something. So whatever I'll do. Right? I'll do, and I'll be good at it. If you're a doctor, you have to be a good doctor. You're going to be a lawyer, you have to be a good lawyer. You have to really sink your head into it. And you have to think, but not to sink your soul into it. Your soul should be devoted to the creator of the universe. He says that's the thing. If before you started becoming, you started getting married, you used to pray, so then you were free. You didn't have any worries. You could spend a long time praying if you wanted to. Right? The Jewish prayers are very long. There's a lot of Kabbalah, a lot of mystical things written about the prayers, different aspects of God, because after all, we're dealing with God. We're praying to God. But now when I get married, so I have to deal with the world, right? So he says, yeah, of course that's right. But prayer you should do even more. Because sein ganze Friedeke Avoda, because everything you did previously was hat sich äußergewend, that you learned in doing Torah and commandments, and prayer is nit genug, it's not sufficient for sein Istika for the situation that you're in now. Was geht a rois, you're now going into the world. Now you really need God. In Nisyonos, and there's going to be all sorts of tests and difficulties and challenges, and nit be'erich, grace, which are much greater than there were previously. Right? Previously, what was the problem? That somebody took your lunch from you or something on the table by mistake, or somebody pushed you out of line, or whatever, or your my line, or someone spilled by accident water on your bed, something like that, little tiny things, right? Things that would, but now you're in the real world. Now you really have to ask for God. There's a sign, an oben messianos, that you should stand in, that withstand the tests. So one piece of advice how to deal with the world and how to succeed in the world, the answer is number one, pray. First thing is pray. After that, read books, go to school, take advice. But number one thing is you always have to pray for whatever. It doesn't have to be a long prayer, but it has to be deep. It has to be genuine. Advice number one. Advice number two. Yaakov was given when Jacob was on the way going to Haran, the Torah says, it says that he took from stones from the place and he put them around his head. Rashi says, he made like a fence around his head, because he was afraid because of the wild animals. Yaakov knew where he was going. An orphan, as afilu oifen veg, and he knew that not only in Haran was it terrible, but even to the path to Haran was also terrible. Noch nit der ge ending. Oh, even before he reached Haran. Der Gandik. Oh yeah. Even when he was on the road to Haran, game means to go. Haran, gefinnen sich Chayus Rose. You can find there were all sorts of, how do you say it, terrible wild animals. Therefore, he had the Ganuman Steiner, he took stones on a room geringled, and he surrounded his head in order to protect him from the animals. Says the Rebbe, I mean, does this make any sense? In Plug is not first time. This is totally not, doesn't make any sense. It's not understandable. Was Yaakov at the ringled mit the steiner, that he put stones only around his head? And why didn't he put stones around his whole body if he was afraid of animals? I mean, animals, they like the meat. Animals don't attack your head first. Maybe at the person's neck or something because it'll kill him. So what? But still, I mean, the animals, they'll attack any parts of his body. Mimanoshach. You can say, well, no. The reason he didn't surround his body because he believed in God. So the Rebbe says, well, that really makes no sense. And he says, but if he really did have trust in God and for laws and zich der Eberster, as hat euch the cup, he should have also not put stones around his head. Und ob hat nit Gewalt ankommen zu okay. To nit from Milo Yatava, and if he didn't want to rely on anything above nature, as hotter der gaf verhitten, or if they're goof, so he should have protected his body. Yaakov wanted to do things in a natural way, so surround your whole body. It's also not so understandable what these rocks. I mean, the animals couldn't jump over rocks. Vet managed understand. We can understand what it says in Psalms. It's one of the Shir Hamalot. What is it? Psalm 128 or something. I don't know. It says, if you eat from the work of your hands, you'll be happy and it'll be good for you. In other words, don't ask for free gifts from God, that God's going to do everything. You have to work. The work of your hands, if you live from the work of your hands, then you're going to be happy and it's going to be good. But some learn like this. You have to work, but the work has to be the work of only of your hands. Their diok is you have to work only with your hands. The haravanya, the efforts that you have to make are only with your hands. In other words, esaskos b'shef tinkung in parnasa, that you do a job, you work to make money, can be in two ways. Either you do it with only your external powers, namely like your hands, but your head is free and connected to Torah and commandments. Un haravat in parnasa nor mit the hand. He works only with the external forces. In other words, he's doing his job, whatever his job, even if he happens to be a brain surgeon. But he doesn't put his whole entire soul into being a brain surgeon. Where does he put his soul into? I mean, woe to the pupil, to the patients that have a doctor like that, right? He says, no, it's not so. You put all of your powers into being a good brain surgeon, but there should be something deeper. What should be deeper is, where should your head be? It should be air. Is Abraham given? He's given over. He makes his money with his head also. Says one way is that he does his job, whatever he does, and that's only with his external life, with his external forces. What's going on here?
Morning.
Good morning. There we go.
Bad connection.
He wants to make this big, so I'm making it big. Here we go. Ready? So this means
is this. I know. Sorry.
So there's two ways to work in the world. In other words, you should work, but there's two ways to do it. One way is that you don't sink your whole soul into it. You sink your course, you have integrity and you do the job as best as you can, and you're not thinking about anything that diverts you from doing a good job. But on the other hand, that's not where your whole soul is. There's something much deeper, and that is that your mind is really free to think about what God wants. To be a nice person, to be honest, to be this. Right? Some people can be successful and be like sharks, you understand? But there's some people that say, oh, that's the best way to do it. When you're working, you sink your whole essence into work. Forget about the family, forget about everything, forget about morals. And this. The main thing is succeeding in your job. If you have competition, you're worried all the time, you can't be happy. And what about God? Forget that. You forget totally. Maybe on Shabbat. Says the Rebbe, King David said, Yagia kapecha tikochal. If what your work is with your hands, then you'll be happy. And it was only with your hands, with your external powers, but not with your soul, with your head. It says that the Jewish soul is in the head. Happy you will be. Nit nor, not only in spiritual you'll be happy, but also physically you'll be happy. Feel alare, because all these multitude of tricks and things and being clever and advertising, it really in the end it doesn't really help. Via state, like it says, in the chacham lechem, it says the people who are clever, they're not necessarily the ones that make money, right? The professors in business, they're not necessarily the ones that are rich. Adarabba, vi macht nor kalia, of sometimes a person's own cleverness can make things even worse. B'shas v'es declared, like it's mentioned in a lot of places. So if so, in the time when Yaakov Yaakov was going toward Haran, as he knew very well where he was going. Had gewusst, he knew, as vet darfen arbiten by Lavan, he knew he had to work by Lavan, Arami, the trickster, the charlatan. Had oich gewusst, he also know that even Oifenweg, not only that, but even on the way to Lavan were wild animals. Therefore, he took stones and he put them where? Around his head. Why? As soon cup that by his head, he had that by his head shouldn't be any misfortune. The cup soll sein beschützt, the head has to be protected. Und in Tirdus Aderech, the problems of the way, or the arbiter, the work by Lavan, this means the hachanas, the preparation for making a livelihood, because that's what he went to Lavan for, is in order to make wives, to pick his wives and make a livelihood. The preparation and for making a livelihood and the livelihood itself was her haravet, and at the hand with his should only be with his hands and not with his mind. His mind should be trusting God. Now, there's a big thing that comes out of trusting God. Let me just get into this a little tiny bit. If a person really believes that everything comes from God and that God only wants from his good, so if something bad happens to a person, so he doesn't I say blame others. He's not also miserable. The whole world is against me, because a lot of times God makes seemingly bad things happen to people, and in order to give them some sort of a big blessing afterwards, especially we'll learn this with the story of Joseph. We're going to have it in a couple of weeks. The story of Joseph and his brothers. I mean, Joseph, he got the worst. How do you think the worst deal that anyone has ever gotten in the history of the world? All of his brothers hated him for really basically for no reason. And his brothers actually kidnapped him and sold him into imprisonment to be a slave for the slave for the rest of his life. Right? He would not be able to run away. He would not be able to. They had to watch him all the time. And so that's it. I mean, you can't get any worse than that. Finally, he ended up in a terrible prison, and he had to stay there for 12 years, 13 years, stay in prison. But because of that, first of all, number one, he never gave up. He never fell into depression or number two, because of that situation where he was, and only because of that, there was no other way that it could have occurred. He met the ministers of Paro, and they told them their dreams, and he interpreted their dreams, and he got a name as a dream interpreter. And it so happened that Paro had a dream that he couldn't interpret that bothered him. And from that, all of a sudden, Joseph became the king de facto of Egypt, and he saved the whole entire world. So sometimes what seems to be the worst can actually be best. But in fact, always what seems to be the worst really somehow or other comes out to be the best. Even though we have to understand, like of course, in Judaism is full of terrible things like the Holocaust. How is that for the best? So one day we'll find out. We believe that that's one of the benefits that Moshiach will bring, that we'll understand. Okay, what is the teaching for this? This is for each and every person. As that he has to see that his head should be saved. Yaakov trusted in God. He was not worried, but one thing he was worried about was his head. And it was if his head was in the wrong place, then the animals for sure would get him. Like we just talked about in the morning, Daniel in the lion's den. When Daniel was in the lion's den, so all the time, all that was on his mind was these lions are creations of God, and I'm also a creation of God. It's all the same, right? Being in the lion's den is exactly the same thing as being in the synagogue. It's all just aspects of God. Now the question is, when you're in the synagogue, what does God want you to do? To pray, to learn. When you're around a bunch of lions, what are you supposed to do? Same thing. Right? I'll do what I'm supposed to do. Whatever God says, does it say I'm supposed to be afraid? I'm supposed to run away? If it's not going to help, why should I be afraid? You have to do what's practical, what it says in the Torah. In the Torah, it says that everything comes from God and that everything is for the good. And he really believed that. And that because the whole world depends on man. So when Daniel changed his attitude, his mind was in the right place, his heart was in the right place, if you want to say it, but that means in his mind, then everything went in the right place. And that's what Yaakov was saying. If I think about God all the time, then all the trials and the tribulations, etc., they'll end up coming good and I'll be able to accept the good. But if my head is not in the right place, then any trials and tribulations that I incur I won't be able to accept the fact that there's a big blessing hidden there. And I'll give up before I get the blessing. That's what he says. So therefore, the main thing I have to watch out is my head. If my head is in the right place, then the animals won't be able to get me, like it was with Daniel. Why is that? Of course, Daniel was a long time after. Whereas the cup that Zion, via Darsus, and when your mind is where it should be, as Velen showing b'mil is that automatically also your hands and your feet also should do what they're supposed to do. As a kaparnasah, then making a living, and vet Zion al pi Shulchan Aruch will be according to the Shulchan Aruch. You won't work on Shabbos, you won't cheat, you won't lie. The hand, vet Zion ba'oven, is nor small that the left side pushes away. Over Yamin is makarevis. In other words, you know what to do and you know what to avoid. When the raglayim and the feet, they should run only to do good, positive things. What did Yaakov use to surround his head? Stones, and that's what we're going to learn. What are stones? We'll learn tomorrow. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now, thank you very much for being here. Tomorrow there will not be a class in the morning. All of you that watch this program, there won't be a class in the morning. I have to go somewhere important, but I will, God willing, I will record the class and I'll put it up so you can see it on YouTube. Shalom uvracha.